An active weather pattern will be coming to the United States over the next week, and this is going to bring the return of severe weather to areas like the Great Plains and the Midwest. In addition to that, we are also watching for a potential tropical cyclone just off the coast of the Carolinas that is expected to bring some heavy rainfall today and tomorrow and a potential for a few tornadoes. And also, we could be seeing our first big cool down across much of the United States as we go later into this month. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather across the United States over the next 7 to 10 days. And we are going to begin with what's happening across the country this morning. Overall, the main area that we're watching for today is actually going to be this little area of convection that's sitting just offshore of North and South Carolina. At the time of this recording, this is currently potential tropical cyclone 8, which is expected or at least is likely to become a tropical storm today, meaning that it's going to become named as Tropical Storm Helene as it continues to move northwest. And this will actually be making landfall this afternoon in North or South Carolina as a middle ground tropical storm. Sustained winds around 45 to 55 miles per hour is currently forecasted. Really, the biggest thing out of this is going to be the rain that it brings to the Carolinas, but there will also be a potential for a few tornadoes, and we'll outline that potential in just a moment. And for the remainder of the United States, things are relatively ordinary, nothing really too crazy, aside from a trough that is coming over California. This is eventually going to move over the Rocky Mountains, and that will be our next shot for severe weather as we go into the early to mid portions of this week. Now, in a rare occasion, we're actually talking about the tropics early in this forecast because we do have tropical cyclone that we are watching just off the coast of South Carolina, currently called potential tropical cyclone 8, but at some point today, this will probably become our next tropical storm, which again would be Helene. We also have tropical depression Gordon out in the central Atlantic Ocean. As of right now, this is what it looks like for the Carolinas. So again, landfall is expected later today back over in South Carolina. It's not a really organized area of storm activity yet, but as it organizes today, this is expected to become a tropical storm as this moves towards South Carolina. I would probably say by like 11 o'clock this morning, this will probably end up becoming a tropical storm. After it makes landfall, it will eventually just weaken into a post-tropical cyclone, and it will continue to dump rain across North and South Carolina and parts of Virginia before it eventually dies out. Unfortunately, this is not going to go nearly as far north as we initially thought, which means areas like Ohio might not actually see that much rain out of this disturbance, but we'll talk more about that here in a second. Also, here's tropical depression Gordon. As of right now, it was already a tropical storm, but it's back down to a depression. It will curve off to the north as we go into the middle of the week and become a tropical storm again, but no impacts to land is expected. If you know any fish, though, out here, make sure to let them know. But today's tornado threat is going to be a little bit interesting. We are watching two areas, one of which will be in Minnesota and North Dakota, maybe an isolated brief tornado sometime later this afternoon or evening, but really the area that I want to talk more about here is the Carolinas, back over in North Carolina, mainly for the tornado threat during the day today, mainly during the afternoon and evening, where this tropical system will bring the potential for a few tornadoes across North Carolina. Now, granted, this is NATOcast. It does show higher probabilities than the Storm Prediction Center, but I think it does a good job of outlining where the greatest potential for any tornado threat would be, which I do think will be near the North Carolina coastline. Further you go inland, I think the risk of tornadoes does drop as you go further west or north. So the tornado threat for today is going to really start to ramp up as we go later into the afternoon hours. A lot of the tornadoes that we are going to see, or any tornadoes that we see in general, will be mostly again in southern North Carolina. A lot of storms will be trying to come right offshore, moving inland as water spout producers, and they'll try to basically produce those water spouts moving inland as potential tornadic activity. But again, as we go into the afternoon and evening hours, that is when the main concern for tornadic activity will be. As we go into the overnight hours, we could see another round of maybe a couple of tornadoes that'll probably be on the briefer side of things in eastern North Carolina. And then as we go into Tuesday, I think the tornado threat is very low, but if we see any tornadic activity, it would be in very far southern Virginia or even north or northeastern North Carolina. So here's the future radar for today. This is by lunchtime. Notice again, some of these red areas here on the future radar are indicating potential supercells that could produce the potential for, again, a brief embedded tornado or two. As we go later into the afternoon, we'll probably get a more organized band here of tornado producing cells. And as these move inland here into southern North Carolina, we'll have to watch for that potential for a tornado tornado threat. As we go into the overnight hours, that threat moves more to the north across eastern North Carolina, and then as we go into Tuesday, the threat for tornadoes is much lower, but again, if we see any, it'll be basically in this corridor here, so like Richmond, Virginia, or even just here again in northern parts of North Carolina. And again, notice how the system really dies out. Rain will reach more than likely Ohio, but the problem is it's not going to be much. There's a big drought right now in Ohio, and this does not look very substantial, but there will at least maybe like a trace to maybe a tenth of an inch of rain in some spots, so at least it's something. I did mention earlier in this forecast that we are going to be dealing with quite the active weather pattern in parts of the United States, and the main area that we're going to be dealing with that is going to be in the central and northern plains, at least during the week, because we are going to be dealing with the potential for trough ejections over the Rocky Mountains, and the first one is going to be early this week, mainly tonight and tomorrow. This is going to be a negatively tilted troughs, and a lot of the time when we get troughs like this, they do bring an increased level of severe weather. We do have severe weather outbreaks very commonly with negatively tilted troughs. The good news about this one, though, is I don't think it's going to be a big tornado producer, so that's some good news at least for now. But as we go later into the week, the problem is going to be is that we're not going to just see that one trough. We're going to see another large trough enter the country as we go into Thursday into Friday. This could bring a threat for severe weather as well across parts of the central and northern plains and perhaps back into the Midwest. And so this is definitely going to be something to watch for. And after this low pressure system moves through, we could see colder weather on the backside of that one that could be a bit more impactful for the northern plains and as well as the Northwest, which you're going to see here on the future radar and as well as on the temperature map here in a moment. So here's the future radar for the next couple of days. Today and tomorrow, storms up in the northern plains, severe weather possible, damaging winds, hail, isolated tornado threat. As we go into Tuesday, that trough will start to move over the Rocky Mountains. We should have a more organized threat for severe weather Tuesday evening across parts of Nebraska, South and North Dakota, and maybe even parts of Montana. As we go into Wednesday, that trough will start to move slowly to the north into Canada. Shouldn't really see a whole lot in the way of severe weather out of this on Wednesday, but Thursday will be the return of at least some showers and thunderstorms in the northern plains and upper Midwest back into Minnesota. That could bring a round of severe weather. And then as we go into Friday and Saturday, things look a bit quiet for Friday, but by Saturday, I think that's when our next storm is going to develop back over in the central plains. This one could be a little bit larger of a storm. This one very easily could bring severe weather to the central plains and then eventually move into the Midwest with its current trajectory. Now, granted, we are still about 7 days out from this, so things could change, but definitely looking like something to watch for if you are in the central plains or even the western Midwest. I'm not sure if Illinois or Indiana will really get involved in this quite yet, but we'll keep you posted if anything does look a bit more apparent as we get a bit closer. Now, for the rainfall over the next 7 days or so, we are still looking at the majority of rain falling either in the mid-Atlantic, the northeast, or back into the central or northern plains, and even back into parts of the Northwest, which is where we're going to be watching for plenty of rain out of a trough that's going to be moving very slowly. Here's what the temperatures look like, at least the trend over the next week or so. Temperatures will be above average for most of the country. Anywhere in the southwest or west coast will remain below average, with a nice little cool down sitting over there for really about 5 or 6 days. And as we go into the weekend, those temperatures just keep staying above average for most of the Great Plains and as well as the Ohio Valley and back into the East Coast. Again, we could see a cool down come in sometime maybe in the later half of this weekend or by next week. It's uncertain right now, but if we do have a trough that builds up, we could see cold air come out of Canada, and that could actually bring a nice little relief to areas in the northern and central plains, and that could stretch into more areas. But again, it's still over a week out. Not exactly sure if that'll happen, but it is going to be something to watch for. The Climate Prediction Center for now is on the same boat right now, anywhere from September 21st until the 25th, which is the first 5 days of fall. We'll be looking at above average temperatures, at least a higher likelihood of that, anywhere across the Great Plains and anywhere east of there. Below average temperatures, more likely than not, back over in the Rockies, and then anywhere back over on the West Coast will start to warm back up again as we go into the first week of astronomical fall. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.